So the moment that you start thinking that you've got it together is the exact moment that you just lost it.
So Rande Howell, welcome back on the podcast. It's been a while, but I'm glad to have you here again.
Thank you very, very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. So I think, first spoke together in like 2015, a while back about trading.
Way back then. Yeah.
The whole style. So I want to kind of hear what has changed since then. Anything new that you're coming across, or what else has like progressed since then?
Probably for me, the one thing in my my orientation to trader training and to basically peak performance is really from a neurobiological standpoint. How do you change the brain that engages uncertainty? And I think the thing that I've woke up to more and more and more as I engage traders and I engage portfolio managers is the just sheer profound impact that uncertainty has on the brain. And there's no escape from it. And the whole key, though, is you have to begin to ask, how do you train the brain to engage uncertainty so that it's open to possibility rather than locking into particular survival instincts? And that's probably grown because I came into this work as a therapist. And I've come away from here where this is really about enormous training of what has to go on to build a brain that gives rise to a mind that can engage uncertainty with risk. A completely different model than trying to help people feel better. Okay?
Mm-hmm. There's lots to discuss in that for sure. So just a bit of background about yourself. You are a trader psychologist as well as an author of the book Trader Markets Within Hedge, which I read like many years ago, which was awesome. And you've been coaching one of my friends in Montreal some time ago, so Houston. So that's kind of how I came to know about you and your work, which is good. Anything you want to tell people, any other thing that I didn't mention you want to cover? So people know you are a little bit better.
Yeah, the major thing to understand about me is that I come out of a background where I'm used to working with really tough populations, PTSD type stuff, violent prisoners. And I've always been intrigued by the way the limbic system or the emotional brain adapts and triggers responses to threat in the environment. And that's probably the big deal. If you look at my work, it's really all about, this automatic learning that's gone on by the brain while you weren't looking. And really learning to get in and to diagnose that and to take it apart, tease it apart, and to retrain the brain to respond to uncertainty very differently. That's, all else. That's really that's what it's really all about to me.
Awesome. And what made you move to helping traders and coaching traders?
That's actually a funny story. There was a period of time where, basically, I was teaching a peak performance class, and it also had a spiritual element to it. And I was actually at an Episcopalian spiritual retreat, okay, where I discovered that I was the only sober moment in an otherwise very drunken weekend. And while I was there, which was mind blowing to me, I did not expect that at all. And while I was there, I did this workshop. And basically, it was about peak performance. And a guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Randy, this is really amazing. I'm having a problem in my business, and I would like to know if you might be able to help me." And I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, with all these really big banks and stuff like that. So I'm used to working with that kind of peak performance. And I said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, I have two partners and I who run a hedge fund. And this is 15 years ago now. So I want you to understand that. And I looked at him and says, "Well, what's a hedge fund?" That's how just absolutely I was unprepared for the market that I was about to become part of. And he didn't bat an eye. What he did is he realized that, oh my God, this guy's talking a language about peak performance. I'm having performance problems. Can he help me in the performance problems? And over time, yes, he became a much better portfolio manager and trader, and went out on his own. But then he's also referred people to me, and before you know it, my wife and I just started noticing that our profitability and our interest lay with traders in the financial community rather than clinical clients, because they tended to be a lot more motivated. They once they understood they had a problem, that if they could not master that problem, they were not going to make traders. So ultimately we stumbled into it. Okay, I wouldn't say that it was well planned, but as I've gotten into it, it's become literally one of the most fascinating aspects of understanding human behavior and the way humans work in the world. And it's just absolutely, I love this work.
That's a really cool story. So we mentioned about uncertainty before. I'm curious to hear, in your opinion, what is the most or the biggest uncertainty for traders? Is it when they're in a trade, or is it the overall picture of something like, will I be able to make it?
I actually believe that traders' problem happen, they lose or win long before they start trading. They bring a particular mindset to the game of trading. And if the biases in that mindset don't match up with the needs for trading effectively, they're going to have problems with either getting into trades, blowing up revenge trading, not being able to take profits when they have. It's all over the place. But the main thing, the biggest thing is the attitude toward winning and losing. That's the big deal. Recently, I was talking to a guy who just laid down a little over $50,000 to get this complete trader training education, okay, from a very expensive source. But he said, I've got it. I'm going to be incredibly well trained. And while they were in that training, the people who are running this thing kept asking, what is it you want to accomplish? And they wanted to accomplish things like becoming the first billionaire trader, this, that, the other, all these really heavy goal-oriented goals that certainly trading, when you look at trading and you start leveraging it up, you realize, oh my God, sky's the limit with this stuff. And yet, most of the world, and I used to think it was Americans, but what I've discovered, no, it's the whole darn world. We're so focused on winning. I need to win. If I win, I'm going to make money. If I make things happen, I'm going to make money. And the one thing I don't want to do is lose. I don't want to be a loser. It's kind of like in where I played football in high school, there was a big, huge sign in our dressing room. And that sign said, winners never lose and losers never win. And I just want you to say it's a mentality. They bring that mentality about winning and losing into trading. And that mentality is rooted in the ability to control outcome. Okay? And when they get into trading and recognize no matter how hard they try, no matter how much money they spend on systems, no matter how much mind control they conjure up, is that they are not in control of the outcome. And that flips people out. That flips the evolutionary psychology that the humans that we're built to be from an evolutionary standpoint. It flips it, and it freaks out that caveman and the caveman living with you and I. And so that's the biggest problem, is the mind they bring to about winning and losing. I promise you, it's I have never met a really good trader that was not a damn good loser.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So I've heard of issue like really, really big and good traders that tend to kind of like lose their temper when they lose money in the market, and they tend to kind of break keyboards or whatever that is. And so do you think that's possible to be able to perform well even though you react bad to losses?
There is a great book, and I recommend it. I'm gonna slaughter this guy's title, but I think everybody should read this. And it's The Hour Before Wolf and Dog. And it's by an ex-derivatives trader who became a neuroscientist. And what he really did is he examined institutional trading. And he examined the culture that produces the kind of institutional traders that you see. And ultimately, this is when, under big days that, people would get cranked up. The fight flight was just cranked up. They had to go to the bathroom. They had to clear out their gut. They had to do everything like that. They were really getting prepared. And ultimately, what he noticed is that a few guys would have these monster years where they might make $50 million for their firm. And they're the ones doing all that theatrics that you're hearing about. And then there would be also these guys who only made $10 million a year, but they consistently did it year after year after year. The guy that got the bonuses was the guy who hit the home run. Okay? And, ultimately what happened is in 5 years, the guy who hit the home run, the $50 million, was no longer in trading. Yet the guys who were moving along, not making spectacular achievements, but really had the mind for trading, they were consistently giving the kind of profitability their institution needed, okay, to survive, while they looked for the next home run hitter. And basically what the guy comes down to is that until that culture changes, you're not going to see the consistent profitability that is strived for with retail trading. Because, ultimately, what I'm looking for are people who are looking to become consistently profitable. That's a big deal, not going and hitting home runs. I could care less about that, because what I know is a lot of guys with small accounts, what they're going to do is they're going to add more risk, and all of a sudden you start seeing this guy go from 5,000 to 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and he feels he's all pumped up, he's all ready. But what he's also added during that time, he started adding more risk, and he's gotten lucky. And suddenly that risk catches up with him, and he finds a black swan moment and blows everything up. That happens all the time, particularly with people who are getting into trading to get rich quick. And they will look at that risk factor, and they don't understand that risk factor can really turn on them, and it can become very ugly very fast. So yeah, you read about that in institutional traders, but understand this, is that institutional traders, they're gone in 5 to 7 years. They don't last long. What you're looking for is a guy who can stay the course and consistently produce money. It's a different mindset, but it's also a different mindset that comes in the institutional people. They're looking for that home run. That's who they're recruiting for. That's all that stuff. And the retail thing is that you have to overcome all this BS that you're presented with by the trading tradings, and recognize that no, this is really about risk management, where you're not allowing your risk to get up too far beyond 1% on any one trade. You would never risk more, because your job is to build that thing over time. And I have a friend of mine, not a ex-client of mine, just sent me his ROI for the last year and a half. And it's 77%, which if you've been around traders a long time, you recognize 77%. That's what the professionals do. They're hitting that. They're hitting when you start hitting between 48% and 90% return on investment per year, that's what really good professionals are doing. And what he said is, I had to quit using everything I learned about trading, but what I incorporated was your work about the brain and uncertainty. And I finally came to the moment of where I knew I had to slow down, and I had to quit being this alpha who wanted to win, and I had to become the trader who basically vigilantly waited patiently for the setup to show up, and was undaunted by the wait. I wasn't bored anymore. It was just patience. and then the trade, the trade comes. It'll show up, well, depending that you have a system that works with an edge that works, that finds valid setups, and you're hitting an appropriate level of those valid setups. But it goes back to winning and losing. That's what it really, the mind you have about winning and losing.
And that's probably the question I get the most by email or anywhere, is like, how to become consistent in trading. So if you had to describe the consistent, like how a consistent trader would be, what would that look like?
They're you would see them not getting very fussed at losing. You would see them being able to take losses, because ultimately, when you're trading, what you're doing is you're taking your risk management as a system, as a set of standard practices, and you're placing it on top of the randomness of the markets. And what you're doing is saying, okay, I know that if I follow these rules of my risk management, I have an edge that if I keep playing this game, it's going to produce, I'm going to extract more capital out of the markets than I give back. Ultimately, though, what happens is when you're working with that randomness, we often believe that, I've got this indicator, I've got these really cool things, and, it's going to give me an edge, and it's going to show me high probability. And what you ultimately understand is that a valid setup is an organization happening within randomness that may or may not play out. You don't know. And you've built a hypothesis around your work about, okay, this one looks like it's a valid setup from my rules. But then I have a friend that teaches, and what he does is he says, Randy, once we get into a trade, we have 4 3-minute windows that decide whether or not we're going to stay in that trade. He says most of the time it's the second window that will get us out of the trade, because we don't want to be in a trade no matter how much we want that trade to work. The truth is that once we see that trade not fitting our hypothesis, we want out of the trade at a small loss. Now, this guy that I'm talking about pulls $10,000, $12,000 a day out of the markets. He's good. And yet what you're looking at is that what he's built, and certainly he likes to win. And I might add is I actually have a video of this guy taking his keyboard and hurling it into one of his screens. So this guy could have matched up to the guys you were talking about, blowing up things and things like that. But ultimately, he had to tame that anger, become patient, and basically become, but he could not. He used to use anger as a way of controlling outcome. When you get angry, it's an accelerant, and what happens, you feel, whether or not it's true or not, that you can control outcome, you can make things happen. And what he discovered is no, he couldn't. And he realized that he had to back out of that, and out of that work, instead of becoming angry, he became an incredibly good loser. He did not stay in bad trades. He did not feed bad trades with good money. And at first, there was a part of him that wanted to save that trade, but he came to recognize and learn how to manage that impulse, that's just simply not the way to win in trading. So that's where the consistent profitability comes in, is that on any one given trade, some guy, I'll give you a good example. I work with and he's one of the only friends I have as a trader trainer, but he's very successful, and he has a group of people who would trade around him, and these are like hedge fund managers and things like that. David's been around for a long time. He's got all the attachments of high level success and all that stuff, and he gets into a trade, and as he gets into it, he recognizes it no longer fits his criteria. So he gets out and just thinks nothing of it. The next day, he has several traders come to him and says, David, you just missed a huge move. Man, we made a ton of money yesterday. Man, you should have stayed in there. And David's response was, no, what happened didn't fit my conditions. And if it doesn't fit my conditions, I'm out. He doesn't have a backstory. Okay? He has a story of this is the edge. This is what constitutes my edge. If it doesn't meet the conditions of my edge, I'm out. He's not waiting for the home run. He's not saying, I can turn this trade around. I'm just going to get some money. None of that. And he's the guy, he's the guy with the house in Connecticut. He's the guy with the airplane, the boats, and blah, 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 blah. And he's a great, nice guy. He just has learned to create rules, follow them, and recognize the moment that you leave those rules, when you have them sitting over the randomness of the markets, the moment that you leave those rules, you're gambling. And what you'll discover in retail trading is that most people, even though intellectually they know that, geez, I know that I need to be able to take good losses. But when they're in the act of being there and capital at risk, they look at something and they want to make it turn around. They don't lose it. And you're recognizing that's the demon right there. That's the part you have to master.
That's what I'm thinking. So you might understand the concept, but then you cannot turn it around like one day or one evening by understanding the lesson. You gotta, like, what do you think it takes to be able to shift that around and to change it? A lot of practice, or how would that be?
Well, it's not really practice. This stuff that you read about, that I'm going to train my subconscious mind by repeatedly doing all this stuff with all these visualizations, all these affirmations, that works until you hit pressure. That works till you hit stress. And then the old survival patterns kick in. The key is you have to be able to go in and start really, and this is where your trading account actually becomes your best friend. It's brutal, okay? I acknowledge that it's brutal. But what it's doing, your trading account is revealing the effectiveness of the beliefs that you have about managing uncertainty that you are projecting onto the markets. And you're seeing it in your trading account over time. And the hardest thing in the world is to get the trader to look at the trading account as a truth meter and to start saying, well, what are the beliefs? And these are not beliefs that you have in a thinking way. These are not beliefs that you just say, yeah, I believe in God, country, and blah 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 blah, whatever, all that kind of stuff. No, what you're looking at is literally at the level of the foundation. Your emotional brain does not operate in language. Your thinking brain, that's the one that does all this talking inside your head when you're trading, would love to believe that it's in control. But what's in control is an emotional brain who doesn't think as we understand thinking. What it's doing, it is literally coordinating how to act with the environment for survival. And it's happening on what we would call a subconscious level. And what advertisers know is 95% of the decisions you make are not conscious. And what they do now is they have all this, the eye technology and stuff like that. And what they're doing is they're going in, they're videotaping people. They're not listening to what they say is behind their decisions. What they're doing is they're watching the body as it engages the stimuli out in the world that the advertising agency is trying to sell. That's how it's done. It's kind of like I'm from the advertising industry. And many years ago, I worked on a Mercedes account. I was looking at this and I came upon this really curious number. And this is in the 80s. Okay, so this is years and years and years ago. Do you know what the average cost of a repair on a Mercedes was in the 1980s? Over $1,700. And I looked at it and says, how can people desire status to such a level that they'll be so stupid as to spend a minimum of $1,700 on a repair? And that would include like getting a tune-up, having an oil change, and stuff like that. And you're going, my God forbid that if you have something serious. But that was the need for status, and you don't see that consciously. Okay, you don't see that consciously, but there it is in operation if you're looking for it. And in trading, what you're doing, you're saying, you know, I need to get beyond my need for adequacy. I need to get beyond my need to matter, because most guys are trading really as a way of proving they matter. If I make a bunch of money, then I'm going to matter. I'm going to be a big deal. And giving that control to the trading gods is one of the silliest things that you can possibly do, because it's random. The other one is basically proving your worth. And I've literally had numbers of guys who are able to build net worth up to a particular moment, and once they reach that moment, they start losing it back down. What there is a belief behind that level of net worth that locks them into that. And the key is that I see it in the trading account. Now let me expose it as basically something the limbic system did that was very adaptive. That's why it's there. But the problem is, when the limbic system is wiring in a knowing, a belief, you don't see it, but it's simply a knowing of how you interact with the market. And when it triggers, if thinking is in the way, the thinking is just simply pushed away, unless you know what to look for. And most people don't really use their trading account as a detective. And they don't look at these four principles: the adequacy, the mattering, the worth, and the powerlessness. They don't look at that as every human being goes through that. That's what the limbic system is organizing you around. It's those four principles. And it's those guys who grasp that and start changing literally the brain of what they learned as they engage uncertainty in the here and now. Those are the guys who become consistently profitable. I guess you can do it just by repetition. I just don't see that. You know, what I see are guys, by the time they get to me, they're pretty beat up. Okay, they're pretty beat up, and they've done a lot of different things, and they're still not there. And then they start listening to this, biology stuff, and they go, "Oh my God!" All of a sudden, it kind of wakes up to them, realizing there's something else is going on right under my nose that I've never seen. And that's the big deal.
The thing is, for most people, it's hard to see that. Like, once you have a little bit of problem, you say, "Oh no, it's fine. I'll just fix it myself." And then you have to go deeper to figure out that you kind of need help to fix that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people just simply, I get that all the time. You know, if you were to go to my website, there's something that I call the poor man's course. And, you know, it's to get all the materials costs maybe about $150, pretty cheap. And we sell a lot of those, and we've never named it. And yet we keep seeing the same groupings of the book, the workbook, the retail guided meditations. You see all those locked together. And what you know is these guys are saying, "I'm going to do it myself." And some of them do. And I get people writing me back saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, I listen to your videos while I'm trading. I've done this course I've invented. I've done all this stuff, and I've improved as a trader." And I look at it and go, I wonder, when they're saying they've improved as a trader, are they also saying, are they consistently profitable now? Again, to me, that's the measure that I'm going to use to judge whether or not a guy can trade or not. And when you start going up, you know, when you start saying, okay, well, what if I can't do it myself? What if I need help? It's kind of like neurosurgery. You know something? I'm not going to do neurosurgery on myself. I'm going to go find someone who really knows what they're doing and can get in there. And it's kind of like right now, I have a heart condition that's going to require surgery. Okay, and we're at Duke University, and I realized way over there in Thailand, you wouldn't know who Duke was, but Duke is one of the eminent medical schools in doing heart operations. They're just up and beyond anything. And when you sit down and talk with these guys, they talk a completely different game. And I'm going, yeah, these are the guys I want. I know that I can't do this myself. It's beyond my pay grade. It's beyond my capacity, but I can use these guys to get that jump. Now, I don't have to learn what they know, but ultimately the trader has to learn the way his emotional brain works. There's no way out other than that. You're going to have to learn the way the emotional brain works, and you're going to have to be able to take that emotional brain that you're dragging around with you anyway, and the thinking brain, and you're going to have to put them together as a team so that they work together. That's how you become a successful, profitable trader. Not by saying, I can do this. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that says, Randy, I've lost 300,000, 500,000, $1 million, just going up, and I don't have any money now. But now I'm a true believer in your work. Can you spare a dime? Can you teach me for free while I learn how to do this? And the answer is no. I'm a capitalist, and I'm so sorry that you believed that you could do something. You could force the brain into doing something so totally against its design, and actually hold that I can make this happen, and recognize that there are ways to build that mind to accept uncertainty very differently than it was designed to do from the African savannas through evolution. But it's going to require work. It's going to require training. I've come to understand that there is going to be blood, and that there's going to be lots of blood. And it's foolish for me to try to convince people that they're just human, that they bleed like everybody else, and they have to learn themselves. So a desire to trade, that's actually what I like about your company. It's a desire to trade. They've got the desire. Now, how am I going to translate the desire to trade into profitable trading? That's a big deal.
I guess the other place where I see people fall short, and I'm like super guilty of that myself in the past, is like you get some result, you get better, we could say you get profitable, and then you get to you don't maintain your success. You don't do things on a daily basis to maintain that, and then you kind of fall behind. So what are some of your either exercise or tips to be able to kind of sustain and keep on the same level all the time?
Something, there is from the American Revolution, there is a very famous quote that I now claim as my own, okay? And it's called, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. The problem that you're talking about is when people start becoming profitable, in their minds, the only thing they can really think about is they've overcome their fear, they've overcome their aggression, they've done all this stuff, and everything's going to be, they're just going to go off in the sunset, and they're going to start making money, and everything's going to be fine. And this is what we call euphoria. Now, you may know it as overconfidence, but from a neurobiological standpoint, it's euphoria. And euphoria is an emotional contagion that has you believing in just outrageous things, okay? That you can go into a casino and you're hot and you're on fire, and you can go to the crap table and you can just win big. Not an understanding is that they're going to take your money. Odds are on their side. It may be on your side for a moment, but you play that long enough and it will be on their side. And, ultimately in euphoria, you start believing that you know how to trade, and you lose your humility. And what you do is you blow yourself up. Happens all the time. And what they discover is that, what guys discover is that the most dangerous thing is the euphoria, because that's when they'll let the risk factors get out of hand, and they really believe they've got it. And that's where you see them blowing up big chunks. So the moment that you start thinking that you've got it together is the exact moment that you just lost it. That's how not just humble, but that's just how much emotional mastery is required to consistently produce profits over time in trading. But yeah, that's euphoria. It's a big one.
So is it more also like of a mindset thing? You gotta have the right mindset, or are there things that you gotta do to kind of keep the mindset?
There's things you have to do to. In my work, what I'm doing is I'm teaching you how to build a mindset, and then I'm teaching you how to maintain that mindset. And there is a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but all human beings, part of their being is both incredibly destructive and very constructive. You can see that. The example I like to use is there was a UCLA experiment in the late 60s, early 70s, of where they took UCLA kids, college kids, and enrolled them as guards in a prison. And what they were going to do is they were told that they were going to use classical conditioning to condition non-compliant prisoners into obeying rules. And they had a one-way mirror where they were watching the prisoner, and he was locked into something what we would look like as an electric chair. And every time that he was non-compliant to a request, they would give him a shock. Now, the prisoners were actually graduate students who were in on the game. They were not being shocked. There was no one-way mirror. The graduate student could watch as the guard, the kid, was getting ready to shock him. And what they did, they took UCLA college kids and in 3 days turned them into lethal killers. The kids were knowingly giving lethal shocks to the graduate students, the prisoners, because they weren't compliant. 3 days, okay? That's that destructive quality that lives within all of us. And if you do not acknowledge that that lives within us, and in my work, I call that the inner critic, okay? If you do not acknowledge that it lives within you and that you need to be alert to its presence, it will sneak into what I call the committee of the mind, and it will create havoc. You have to become an observer of the mind that you're organizing and bringing into trading. And with me, what you would see, I'm training people to have a specific mind, and that they've already looked for the inner critic, that they know where their orphan nature is, their darkness is, and that they're ready to engage uncertainty with stress in it, and they've been taught how to handle that and not have the survival instincts kick in. And that takes training. That's not something that, that's not something you're going to say, well, I'm going to get this MP3 guided meditation and I'm going to listen to it for 3 or 4 times and I'm going to have it. No, it's rerouting the brain from the African savannas to the realities of the randomness of the trading worlds. It's quite a journey. That's what happens. And to become alert to that and get rid of all that positive thinking BS, or that stuff that says I'm just going to think positively and everything's going to be great, everything blah 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 blah, there's also enormous destructiveness going on at the same time. And if you don't keep up with that, it will bite you. And I realize that's a bummer to talk about, but people who grasp it and recognize that it's just the human condition. It's trading today, but a few years ago, like with the San Francisco 49ers, those were guys going out to strike it rich, either in California or Alaska. And I can't tell you how many men died, trying to make that strike rich, and they never saw the destructiveness of what they were doing. Guys like Levi Strauss decided, this is too hard to work. I can sell them cloth and make a lot of money. And he did. That's what jeans were. That's what these guys wore. So it's building and maintaining the mind, and recognizing that that mind has to truly be maintained, or it will start sliding in different ways, and usually that's not good for the trader.
Yes, interesting concept for sure. And I know for a fact that the shortcut would be, like, people would love that better, but there's no shortcut in that kind of field.
There's no shortcut.
Yeah.
But they want it. It's kind of like what you'll also notice is that trading now has been grouped with property management, of where you're going and buying property, making a lot of money, and all that kind of good stuff. What you see is trading is grouped into the same thing. Is I started seeing a number of people who got into rental properties and stuff like that, and it's a way of getting rich quick, because you get properties and start taking cash out of them, and you have short-term cash just sitting there. Of course, you've taken money out of the property and you owe it, but let's not talk about that. And that same kind of mentality they start coding trading with. And trading, there's that old joke, how do you make a small fortune in trading? Start with a big one, and this is really about not getting rich quick. This is about retraining the brain and the mind about how it engages uncertainty and risk. That's what it's about.
That's powerful for sure. For people that you work with, is there like a average time that people need to be able to reframe their way of thinking and change how they do things?
3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
It's funny because we have the group course that we offer is a 2-month program. But what I recognized is that when people take that course, it's coming at them at about 150 miles an hour. And so what we did many years ago is that you can audit another course free. You also have access to the course materials for an indefinite amount of time. And we have people going back to the virtual classrooms. The key is that what I'm looking to do is to be able to say, I know 2 months is a very short period of time to be able to start integrating this kind of change into the system. And that's why I want them to have a lot longer access, okay? And have access to another group course so that the speed of that course slows down the second time. And the individual course, we anticipate it being 3 to 4 months. And it just takes about 3 months for a brain to change the limbic beliefs that it operates from. That's the main thing. And most people find 4 months is better, and to integrate it fully takes about a year. So it takes time, it takes work. And what we found is the guys who actually see the change happen, those are the guys who do the homework. Those are the guys who say, oh my God, this is like going to school. And what happens is that I have homework, I have to do it, I have to apply that homework to the medium of trading. And as long as you're in the yoga studio, it's absolutely useless. If you're not learning the skill in the environment that you're in, you're not learning. So we're looking at it and going, 3 to 4 months is the bare minimum. And most people discover that 5-6 months is what's really necessary to produce the kind of change they're looking for. I look at that as short term, when a guy comes to you and he says, well, something, I want to be trading five contracts so I can be making much money. And I'm going, well, how are you doing with that? He says, I'm doing horrible. And I say, well, I'll tell you what, I can train you to use systematic desensitization to be able to move from one level of putting risk on the brain to another level. And I can have you doing that in a year. They say, oh, that's way too long. And I will ask, well, how long have you been trying? Oh, about 7 years. And I'm going, okay, the brick wall's right over there. The brick wall's right over there. Just keep running into it. until you've hit it enough to know that I need to think of another way of changing the brain that trades. That's really what it boils down to.
Interesting stuff. And how do you know that the change happened? Can you spot in a way, or is it just with your trading account that you'll see?
Your trading account.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. You do not trust your thinking. Your thinking can get so skewed, but what happens, the trading account is constantly telling you the effectiveness of the beliefs that you're projecting onto the markets. And it will not lie to you. It's your friend. You may not like what your friend has to say, but it's your friend. That's how you know. That's why when people write me, I'm looking for their return on investment over a period of time as a measure of basically the development of their skills. I already know that there's plenty of people who can do this work in spots, but I'm looking at, have you trained yourself for the long haul? That's really the deal. And I think if a lot of people understood what's actually required to produce success in trading, there'd be a lot less people jumping into trading. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work, and you have to love the game of trading, not just winning and making a lot of money. You just have to love the game of trading.
But the good thing is learning these things for trading help you in other areas as well, in business and maybe even personal life in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. What people discover is that particularly as they start learning how to reorganize the potential that interacts with uncertainty, they realize that's all the brain's been doing ever. Is that basically we live in existence within randomness. Okay? And I would actually say to the religious folks is that God lives in the randomness. And so, even God has a randomness to it that goes up and beyond anything we can imagine. Becoming comfortable with uncertainty, ambiguity, is just simply part of mastery. And as you learn that and you quit trying to make things happen, you learn that you have a lot more power in a different direction than you thought you had. It's quite remarkable.
Fantastic. So Randy, I want to respect your time. We're almost an hour in. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you or reach out after this interview?
Well, the website's probably the best place, or the YouTube. We get a lot of people looking at us on YouTube. You type in Rande Howell YouTube, and you're going to be taken there. And my website is mytraderstateofmind.com or Trader's State of Mind, and that will take you to my website, which there's lots of free stuff. There's lots of videos there. There's lots of articles there. And you get to explore a very deep space about how to redesign the brain for trading.
Awesome. I remember asking you this the first time, but what are your goals for the future now?
My goals is to take this work and to generalize it away from the financial community into the more peak performance, human empowerment model. And I'm writing a new book based on that, and I'm doing programming now based on that. So I do not want to I do not want to die and then on my epitaph read that, Randy made me a lot of money. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people who are able to seize opportunity and to build a completely different human being than the one that they started with. That's the thing that really works for me. So mine is up and beyond. It's, trading has been good to me, and I will always be around. But I believe that I'm being called to further my work with more general populations.
That's awesome. So thank you so much, Randy, for this interview, and I wish you good luck for that goal for sure.
You are so welcome. I've had a lot of fun.